They say we sleep while the wolves circle, but the truth is, the wolves are already in the camp. They're not waiting at the gate anymore. They're among us, changing the rules, reshaping the ground we stand on. And if we don't wake up, if we don't act, we are going to find ourselves living in a country we don't recognise. A storm is brewing here in Britain. Not a foreign invasion, not a natural disaster, but a storm of division, control and betrayal. And if you listen closely, you can already hear the thunder. I'm Craig, a former British soldier, and I spent 16 years in uniform. I've worked with and served alongside some of the toughest regiments and soldiers this country has to offer, and I have seen firsthand how quickly nations can unravel when trust is broken. And looking at Britain, I can see quite a few cracks forming. The same fractures I've seen overseas, where communities break apart, where governments overreach, where ordinary people are pushed until they push back. That's why I'm here today, to talk about the signs, to talk about the danger, to talk about the very real possibility that civil war is coming to Britain. And make no mistake, if unity fails, we don't just lose a nation, we lose ourselves. Let's start with the bigger picture. Britain didn't just wake up one morning and find itself divided. This has been building for years. We had Brexit, which tore the country in half. Families split, friends fell out, communities were pitted against each other. We've had years of political failure, governments promising control, but delivering chaos. We've had austerity, the NHS on its knees, housing out of reach, wages flat, while elites in London and Brussels line their pockets. And through it all, people started to lose trust. Trust in Parliament, trust in the media, trust in the very institutions that are supposed to protect us. I've seen this before in conflict zones. When trust breaks down, when people feel ignored, abandoned, betrayed, that's when fracture lines open up. That's when neighbours stop being neighbours. And that's when order turns to chaos. And that's where we are right now. Economic strain, social division, and political leaders who are fanning the flames instead of putting them out. But the real battle isn't about money or politics. It's about identity, who we are, who we belong to, who gets to decide what it means to be British. Now let's talk about one of the biggest warning signs right now. The government's new plan for digital ID. Keir Starmer has announced every worker in Britain will need a mandatory digital ID card. This is by 2029. They're calling it the Brit card. They say it's about stopping illegal migration. They say it's about fraud prevention. They say it's about modernising services. But let's be honest, the majority of people think it's about control. Because once the state holds your identity in a digital system, they hold you. They can track you. They can block you. They decide what you can and cannot access. And here's the thing, the British people aren't buying it. The No to Digital ID petition has already hit well over 2 million signatures. Civil liberty groups are warning this is a mass surveillance in disguise. And ordinary people from all walks of life are saying no. We don't want to be tagged like cattle by our own government. If this scheme goes ahead, you are going to see resistance. People refusing, people finding workarounds, people saying enough. And when millions resist a government mandate, that's not just a protest. That's an early start of a spark of conflict between state and citizen. That is the thing that could light a civil war. And then we come to Starmer's latest speech at the Labour Party conference this weekend in Liverpool. He has stood up there and painted himself as the saviour of Britain. He talked about patriotic renewal. He would secure the borders and bring unity. But at the same time, he called Nigel Farage and Reform UK racist. And in doing so, he has suggested that the majority of Britons, because they don't want illegal migration pouring across the English Channel, they are tainted by racism too. Think about that. The Prime Minister of this country standing on stage, looking at millions of ordinary citizens, working men and women, veterans, parents and grandparents, and branding them as racists because they want secure borders. That's not unity, that's division. That's contempt for the people you're supposed to serve. When leaders use that kind of language, when they demonise their own citizens, they drive a wedge that cannot be repaired. Earlier this year, Starmer unveiled his immigration white paper. He told the nation that Britain risks becoming, quote, an island of strangers. Strong words. Words that echoed some of the darkest speeches in our country. Words that fueled division, fear and resentment. The white paper pushed harsher rules, longer waits for citizenship, tougher visa conditions, restrictions on families. Some cheered it, others called it betrayal. But what it really did was deepen the split, because immigration has become the fault line of our age. On one side, you have communities who feel overwhelmed, who feel ignored, who feel like their culture is under siege. On the other side, you have so-called leaders calling them racist for saying no. That is a recipe for disaster. That is how nations break. And before I carry on, I want to take a quick breather and talk about something that keeps me going through all the madness. Coffee. I run Combat Ready HQ, and one of the things that we have built is our range of coffee blends. And let me tell you, this isn't just coffee. This is fuel for your fight. Our Covert Ops blend is strong, bold, and keeps you sharp. That's whether you're on patrol, in the office, or just grinding through a tough day. Every bag supports the brand, the mission, and keeps this channel alive. And guess what? Here's the kicker. If you grab a bag of coffee, you get a t-shirt half price. So you're not just fueling yourself, you're wearing the ethos. Never be beaten. Head over to the link in the description, combatreadyhq.co.uk. Discount is added automatically at checkout. Now, back to it. Here's the truth. Britain is splitting. You've got digital ID looming. Immigration wars are raging. Politicians calling citizens racist. And millions upon millions of people feeling betrayed. Fault lines are clear. Working class versus the elite. Citizens versus the estate. Once those lines harden, trust collapses. Once those lines harden, once trust collapses, doesn't take much to ignite a spark. Might be a crackdown on protests. Might be a violent clash at Dover or on the streets of London. Might be the government trying to enforce digital ID on millions who refuse. Whatever the spark is though, the conditions are already there. And when it comes, you'll see escalation fast. So what happens if the worst comes true? What happens if Britain slips into civil conflict? You'll see resistant movements, people building underground networks, communities organising for themselves, parallel systems rising up outside of government control. You'll see petitions, protests, and yes, probably riots. Because when the people feel unheard, they make themselves heard by voice. They make themselves heard by force. But you also see something else, resilience. Ordinary people stepping up, veterans, workers, parents, defending their communities, looking out for their own, refusing to surrender their identity to a government that despises them. That's what gives me hope, because I know the British spirit. I've served with men and women who never gave up, and I believe that spirit is still there, still waiting, still ready. So let me end with this. Civil war isn't just a fantasy. It's not just something that happens in far off countries. It happens when trust dies. It happens when leaders betray the people. It happens when division becomes the norm. And right now, Britain is walking that path. But here's the choice. We can either sleep through it, pretend it isn't happening, or we can wake up and together and protect what's ours. You might think I'm being pessimistic. I call it vigilance. And if something doesn't happen right now, if something doesn't change, then the storm is going to come. We need to break this division. We need to get leaders who love and protect the people. And we need to break out of what is coming.